job of the police force to uphold integrity while doing their job. I mean,
And
that's
these are still people. Obviously, people make mistakes, but they have to be held accountable for the fact that they are people and can choose their own way to enforce a set of law. There have been more than enough counts of real police brutality in America. And if we have it in such a transparently free country such as America, there's no doubt that it happens in China on a daily basis. You see these police on camera beating protesters, um, and all they've done is say
simply
what they
show up.
want. They simply show up and say what they want, and the police are allowed to beat these people. And they want an independent inquiry on this. They want
Mm.
a investigation, something to justify their claims they've been brutally mistreated by the people that are supposed to protect them.
The fourth demand would be the implementation of complete universal suffrage. I mean, these people simply want to vote for their own leaders. They want to have, like we've said before, a more democratic or and society. That's what they want. That's honestly something I believe personally that should be granted to all people. People should have a right to say what goes on in their own government, and the Chinese government is denying this from them. They want to have control over Hong Kong and their people.
And the fifth and final one, which is remarkably to note, the only one that's actually been achieved so far. So, with all these terrible stories you hear, and we'll go over it in the next part, especially the specific examples of what's been happening to these people. But out of all these stories you hear and all these things you see, only one demand out of the five has actually been met.
And they're
And
fearing that they're going to take it back on them, and they're also fearing that they're just going to, bend the rules, so to
yeah,
say.
bend the rules. And specifically, what we're talking about is the bill, the extradition bill, um, which is one of the main things that started this. So we talked about it earlier. We started off the podcast with this. The extradition bill is um, the bill that allows people to be extradited from other sanctuaries such as Hong Kong. You have a lot of Chinese refugees who hate the government and wanted to escape that have fled to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the sanctuary for people that need the help. And this bill allowed people to be extradited from Hong Kong to China, to mainland China, where they would face, like, it's
Much
untellable
worse.
what they would. It's much worse.
Yes. Just definitely the denial of basic human rights. It's quite the sad thing. And honestly, I personally don't think that it's much to ask for what these people are asking for, but Chinese government just won't let up at all.
And we see a lot of things like petrol bombs and gunfire in residential Hong Kong neighborhoods. A lot of terrible, terrible problems associated with this. And it's a true geopolitical crisis. I mean, we don't like to throw around that word that often. We like to keep its meaning. It's a very serious situation, and this is more than enough for a true geopolitical situation, crisis, and it's terrible. I mean, they're arresting 12-year-olds. There was a 12-year-old arrested in one of these protests, and it's insane. The same protest they went to, that 12-year-old went to, the first gunshot went out. Somebody could have died there because of that gunshot. It could have been that 12-year-old. Are you willing to look a 12-year-old in the face that's in handcuffs with pepper spray on their eyes and poison gas being breathed in and say, because I like what I have in my country and I want that to stay, I'm going to let you suffer.
Hmm.
Because you shouldn't. As an American, you shouldn't. As a human being, you shouldn't. And because of that, we really need to take a stand for these
Yeah.
people in Hong Kong as a bigger country.
With all this being said, I'm quite curious on how far this will escalate because of just the brutality of the police force there, the human rights violations, and I've seen images of the protesters and videos, begging for help from the outside. Some news coverage, even that's all they ask for, just some sort of influence from anybody they can get, just because they're so desperate for the help. And honestly, you're starting to see this go in a more violent direction. You see protesters that are getting beaten with batons. They're starting to fight back a little, and you kind of thinking, these things always escalate. A interview was done recently with VOA News with a gentleman by the name of Joshua Wong,
The
and
same candidate we were talking about from earlier,
yes,
the pro-democracy candidate that has been barred from
yes,
elections.
and though he himself, when asked if he would be seeking independence, he mentioned that that wasn't the main goal, but human rights violations are getting so far up that he doesn't know what might happen in the future. But in his words, he says the future of Hong Kong should be in the hands of Hong Kongers. But now, under Chinese government, that's why we are continuing to fight. So you're starting to see a little bit of a turn from people being like, I they're seeing what is wrong and they're starting to think this is not what we need to do. We need to fight back against this, and this might escalate and might not. But you know, the hope is that we'll see human rights prevail, and hopefully with minimal violence, for sure.
And these situations, these tensions, you never want to see them go the bad way. You don't want to see a protest in Hong Kong turn into a one-sided civil war. I mean, but that's what it could be at this point. Who knows? I mean, we've got a giant nation that is completely okay with censoring, okay with determining standards of living. It's just really a set amount of time before they take it on the offensive and capture Hong
Mm.
Kong. I mean, realistically, if China captures Hong Kong, what are they going to do? Like, what do you think they would do, Colton? I mean, what are they going to do? What is every other country going to do to China, the main
Yeah,
benefactor?
that's definitely catch 22. I mean, us in the Western culture, whether it be the United States or Great Britain or France, any of these countries, though we truly believe in democratic and ideals, freedoms, and just a lot of what these people are fighting for. And I personally would like to think that we'd want to take the side of Hong Kong and the side of human rights, but at the same time we have that economic strain point where if for whatever reason we supported the Hong Kong side in any sort of conflict, whether it be minor or major, we just receive repercussions for this. And let depending on how far this escalates could definitely determine just how much that we would have to get involved.